we've got a huge amount of momentum that's been built over the last year. I remember saying at the end of the last conference that there was a general feeling in the room that this shouldn't be the end of the conference, but a start of a movement. And I think the movement had already started, really, but the momentum that has been gathered over the last 12 months is just phenomenal. And to kick the day off and talk us through just how that momentum has manifested itself, it's my pleasure to introduce Alistair Forbes, the co-founder of the Scottish Tech Army. Please welcome Alistair.
Thank you very much, Graham. Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for coming. It's a real pleasure to see so many people with us today. Thank you to our hosts at Barclays. Really very much appreciate their generosity in having us back this year. We've got a tremendous agenda set up for today. And I was just saying to a few people as we were coming in, we were having briefing calls with the people who were on the panels over the last few days. And frankly, we couldn't get people to shut up. It was great. So I think there's going to be a really lively discussion. So I'm just going to spend a little bit of time talking you through a little bit about where we are in terms of the Tech Army and the Tech for Good Alliance, some of the challenges that exist right now that we think technology has a role to play in addressing, and hopefully frame the context for the discussions that we're going to be having during the rest of the day. Delighted to be able to bring such a collection of speakers and panelists to you today. People, real experts in their fields, so I'm sure you'll really enjoy hearing from all of them. So, the theme for today is come ready to listen, leave ready to act. So as Graham said, it's very much all about, this is great, let's have a really stimulating and exciting day, but what are we going to do about it afterwards? And I've got in a few minutes' time, I'm going to touch on an example of exactly where that's happened. So, those of you who were here last year will remember that I did my presentation in the classic narrative form of the three-act play, set up, conflict, and resolution. So this year it's going to be more like the sequel, I guess. So I'm hoping it's going to be a bit more Empire Strikes Back and a bit less Phantom Menace. So we'll see how it goes. You can be the judge at the end of the day. So I was contractually obliged to say the word ecosystem as often as I possibly could. So I'm going to start with it right up front this year. And of course, when you're trying to talk about what does this mean, the first place you go is to a dictionary. And of the two major dictionaries, the Cambridge and the Oxford dictionaries, Oxford's really famous for producing politicians and prime ministers. So it's 28 British prime ministers from Oxford. Cambridge, on the other hand, is famous for producing scientists. It's had over 120 Nobel Prize winners. And in the context of what we're talking about and the way that politicians have been going lately, we're going to take the Cambridge definition. So the definition in the Cambridge English Dictionary is any complicated system consisting of many different people, processes, activities, etc., especially relating to technology and the way they affect each other. I couldn't believe it when I saw the definition because it perfectly encapsulates what we're talking about here. So what constitutes an ecosystem? Well, there are some that we're all very familiar with. So the Human Genome Project. Graham was mentioning actually that today is the anniversary of the discovery of DNA, I believe. April the 25th was when the publication was made. This is the Human Genome Project, a massive collaborative effort among scientists around the world to map the human genome. CERN, the Particle Physics Laboratory, 27 member countries all contributing to make things happen that none of them could do on their own. The Vaccine Alliance has been responsible for getting vaccines to over 1 billion people around the world, a massive collaborative effort. Closer to home, we have with us today Alex Hutchison, who is the leader of the Data for Children Collaborative at the Edinburgh Futures Institute. It's been a collaboration with the United Nations and many others, really some groundbreaking work. And Alex is on one of our panels today. And of course, you can't get away without me showing this one and this one, right? So obviously these things take time. Movements take a while to build. The mantra that we gave ourselves when we first launched the Scottish Tech Army was this one: think big, start small, act fast. And that, I think, is the way that we can actually start to make a dent in some really big challenges, not by overreaching ourselves, but by starting with what we know we can do and making it work and building on that. You're going to get two for the price of one here, because my other favorite quote is this one from Mario Andretti, who was the Formula One racing driver, world champion, if everything feels like it's under control, you're just not going fast enough. So my colleagues love it when I say that. So in terms of our ecosystem and our impact, we launched the Scottish Tech Army in April 2020, so 4 years ago, very much at the time a response to the challenges that we were experiencing through the pandemic and lockdown. At the time, we had no idea how long this was going to be relevant or useful, but it's proved to be very much an enduring source of opportunity. So we've had around 3,500 individual volunteers who have signed up, and we're going to hear from a representative group of them in one of the sessions this morning. People who've given of their own time and their talents freely and generously. And that's helped us to work with over 400 different organizations to help them with some of the challenges and some of the opportunities that present themselves to them by helping them to utilize technology to address those opportunities and those challenges. So what is the status of the Tech for Good landscape in the UK? Well, if you look at the number of companies that would be described in some way as Tech for Good companies, there's about 1,000 of them, and roughly half of them are for-profit companies, profit and purpose as they like to call it. Many of them might be B Corps, that sort of thing, and the rest are non-profits. But the characteristics of them are that they're typically quite small. So it's less than 0.5% of the tech companies in the UK, and most of them employ less than 10 people. If you add it all up, it comes to about 30,000 people across all of those companies. If you look at the size of the tech industry in the UK, by a beautiful coincidence, there's about 3 million people employed in the tech industry in the UK. If you could capture 1% of the effort of all those people, you'd double the size of the Tech for Good sector in the UK. And there's a really important message for us in that, which is that we're not asking any individual or any organization to make unreasonable or unsustainable commitments, but it's about getting as many of them as possible to make that commitment. There's a tremendous movement called Pledge 1%, which is a US-based organization, and that really is an inspiration for a lot of the messaging that we're trying to put out there about if we all play our part, then we can all make a difference. So this time last year, we were about 1 year since we'd announced our intention to launch the Tech for Good Alliance. And as I was standing on the stage last year, these were the companies that had already committed, they had already signed up to join the Tech for Good Alliance, to join forces to create positive change, as we like to say. So And Digital, starting off with one of their clubs in Edinburgh. Unfortunately, Fiona can't be with us today because she's got a very happy family event going on right now. But we have a number of Fiona's colleagues from And Digital here today. So And Digital was literally the very first one to sign up. We also have BGSS, again, in this case they're the team in Scotland, based across a number of the cities in Scotland, have been a tremendous contributor. And our very own Graham Johnson, of Donaldson Group, and his colleagues have also signed up, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that later. So these were the three at the time. And I was just saying to Sean earlier, I was going to use that video, you've all seen it, I'm sure, of the guy at the music festival on the hill dancing on his own, and then somebody else comes along, and then somebody else comes along, and suddenly it becomes a movement. I decided not to because that's 2 minutes and I don't have the time, but you get the point. So where are we now? The momentum over the last 6 months in particular is really building on this. So these are the organizations that have now signed up as members of the Tech for Good Alliance. And obviously some very well-known names there, including our host for today, Barclays. This time last year was when we got confirmation from Anne that Barclays had signed off on joining the Alliance, and so they're now a very active member of the Tech for Good Alliance as well. We can't put it on the website yet because we haven't actually got clearance to use the logo, but here's the logo. Opencast Software signed up last week, and there's obviously a number of other organizations we're talking to about the possibility of joining up. You know who you all are. So we're continuing to see more and more enthusiasm and more interest, and correspondingly more and more impact from the work that all these organizations are doing. So looking at those early first mover organizations, And Digital, first project that was completed through the Tech for Good Alliance was carried out by And Digital. They did a project with a Glasgow-based organization called a campaign called the Glasgow Spirit of Christmas. The organization is called Cultivating Mindfulness. So this is a program that they've been running for a number of years. And it's also a really interesting example of an ecosystem, because the first platform that they had built for them to manage this program was built by students at CodeClan, the Skills Academy in Edinburgh, and Glasgow, in fact, as it was, sadly no longer here. But that was done by students at CodeClan. They then asked us to get involved, and some of our individual volunteers helped to update it for the following year. And Digital then picked up the baton and delivered further improvements. And we've got a case study video of that from Julie, the CEO of Cultivating Mindfulness, talking about the impact that's had for her organization. Really tremendous work. And it's supported the gathering and the distribution of presents for 20,000 families across Glasgow who otherwise wouldn't have had any presents at Christmas. So really tremendous impact from that work. BGSS, I said also out of their Glasgow office here, and they have teams across Scotland. BGSS has worked on a number of projects now. So the one that's currently active is for Ewan's Guide. So that's a disability access reviews website. Shonag in the audience there is on the board there. Tremendous resource for people with special access needs. All based on the website. The ask from them has been to create a mobile app to support people when they're out and about more easily. So that's work that BGSS is undertaking. Really looking forward to seeing the output of that. WSREC, the West of Scotland Regional Equality Council, is an umbrella organisation that supports people of various ethnic backgrounds across Scotland, and the BGSS team worked with them to help them update their website and improve their visibility online. And Street Soccer Scotland, another fantastic organisation. There was a film released at the end of March, The Beautiful Game, which is about the Homeless World Cup, which is another amazing organisation. Street Soccer Scotland is the organisation that organises street soccer in Scotland, and its mission is to help people who are homeless find a way back into a better life circumstance and a better environment. Watch the film, it's great, and it's a true story, it's really good. So that's the BGSS team here in Scotland. Again, we've got some tremendous case study material from them, from some of the volunteers who have worked on these projects, talking about the impact it's had on them personally, and obviously also on the organisation as well. So we'll be talking a bit more about that during the course of today. Delighted to share with you that BGSS has now committed to expanding this to cover the whole of the UK for their organisation. And so, it helps to increase the capacity from BGSS. And it's been really fantastic to hear from them how it's benefited them. And of course, all these organisations that they've helped, tremendous impact that's been created there. One of the things that we always try to do is to make sure that the projects that we're offering to organisations are a good fit for them as an organisation and what they want to do, because it's really, really important for people to be, and their organisations, to be able to work on things that they are personally passionate about. And that can be to do with a particular cause they're interested in, or it could be to do with the communities in which they live and work. So this is the third of our first mover companies, Donaldson's Group, who are working with Fife Young Carers, and we've got Harvey in the room with us today. So that project is up and running. Tremendous feedback about the interaction between Donaldson's Group team and the Fife Young Carers group. Harvey, you've got a video that you've made about Fife Young Carers, really inspiring video. So, hats off. Supporting young people who have caring responsibilities across Fife in this particular case, really, really tough challenges that these young people have to face. So, tremendous work that Fife Young Carers does. In these very buildings, as I said, Barclays is a member of the Tech for Good Alliance. Jackie made reference to the fact that in her role as head of citizenship, this is a really important thing for Barclays as an organisation. So the team from Barclays has been working on two projects. So the first of those is with an organisation called Lower Impact Living, which is a circular economy organisation that encourages reuse and reduction in waste. So the Barclays team has been working on a project to help them with an online platform to help people to find and take advantage of opportunities for reuse. That's a really good example of one that it's working with that particular organisation, which is focused in East Lothian in this case. But it's a great example of where, if that's built for them, how many other organisations are doing similar things around the country? How far can we take that work and that value that's being created and scale it out to increase the impact, obviously creating value in society, but also for the people that did the work, giving them the satisfaction of knowing just how far the work that they've done has gone. Second one is Bernardo Scotland. The team is working on some technology to support their employability scheme in the northeast of Scotland. So helping young people get into employment through training schemes and support. So again, giving the Bernardo's team a tool in this case to help with their internal operational activities and their efficiency internally, so that they can be as effective as they possibly can in delivering those services. One of the things that I talked about was the local connections element, and a lot of that is really important, but we're really proud to be able to talk about the national impact, the national scale of the work that's being done by all of these volunteers, both individuals and companies. So I mentioned that we've had around 400 organisations that our volunteers have worked with to support them, increasingly across the UK. Obviously our origins were in Scotland, so there's still a significant concentration there, but we're seeing more and more organisations across the country, and again we have people in the room from organisations in other parts of the UK that we're now working with to be able to create impact across the UK. That scalability I alluded to earlier is also a really important part of that, because in many different spheres of activity, take homelessness for example, there are so many charities that are doing generally very similar activities and providing very similar support, but what historically has tended to happen is that they've all had to fend for themselves in terms of thinking about technology, trying to secure funding to get systems built, figuring out how to look after them. So the opportunity to reduce that duplication of effort, to improve the maintainability and the sustainability of these solutions is enormous. So that's a really foundational principle, particularly the work that we're doing through the Tech for Good Alliance, is looking for those opportunities to create solutions at scale. This is something you're going to hear more about in the session this afternoon, and I can't say too much, or Kirsty might take me out from the back of the room with a shotgun. This is on cue. This is a project called Soundscape. So in the middle is the logo for Soundscape. This, without going into too much detail, has been a tremendous example of an ecosystem at work. So without going into too much detail, this originated from research work that was done within Microsoft and released as open source. And you'll hear the full story this afternoon. But all these organisations were involved. And when I say Scottish Tech Army, I'm including a number of our individual volunteers who works alongside these teams from the corporates to create a service that is now being used worldwide by thousands of people with visual impairment. So watch out for that this afternoon. One of the slides the logos I had on the slide earlier was PwC. So PwC, like many organisations, it has for a number of years had a programme of volunteering that staff are given an allowance of time. In PwC's case, it's one of the more generous ones actually, but they suffered from the problem that many do, is that uptake of those schemes is generally rather low. So people have been given permission to do it, but the number of people who actually do it is relatively low. Now that's partly because people are really busy, but also it's partly because it can be kind of hard to find the right things to do. So this is from the PwC website. This is their One Firm, One Day. And this was talking about the activity in 2023. And I really genuinely don't mean to be disrespectful, but this is gardening and painting. PwC consultants are highly skilled in technology, in business, in finance. So we first got in touch with PwC summer of 2022, and they were here at the summit last year. And again, in the session that Kirsty's going to be leading later on, you hear a bit more of the detail about all of that. But as a direct result of that, we were able to engage with them to start looking at how can they actually really put to use the phenomenal talent base that they have within their organization. So I've decided to call it One Firm 3 days now. So sorry, I should have said that before that. One Firm, One Day, one of the things that they've done to try and encourage uptake of this opportunity is to say to people, right, we're setting aside one day in the calendar every year where we want as many people as possible to use one of the volunteering days. So they make it a big firm-wide thing, really promote the opportunity and to get as many people as possible involved in doing it. So that's an interesting, it's a good initiative to help encourage adoption. But the team that we were talking to in 2022, their one firm, one day activity was digging out tree roots in a park in Lewisham in the rain. Now, I'm sure it's a nice park, but not really utilizing the capabilities of those people. So run forward 1 year to the 19th of May, 2023. That was the first engagement we had with PwC in the skilled volunteering context. And this is what they were doing in 2023. They were proving the viability of Soundscape as a solution that we could take forward. So in that one day, they were able to demonstrate all of that. So, really putting their skills to work. Even more delighted to be able to say that in 2024, they're taking on 3 different projects with 3 different teams, so starting to scale up within PwC. First of those is with Citizens Advice, Salford of Oldham, Stockport, Oldham, Rochdale and Trafford. Sorry, Stuart should have remembered that. Stuart's with us today, and Stuart has some really interesting work that he has been looking to get support for, to complement the work he's already doing, and the PwC team is going to be looking at that. Second one is an organisation called Great Music Scotland, which exists to help disabled musicians have more opportunity to play and perform and to both develop and put their talents to work. Tremendous organisation, creates a huge amount of joy, is not too strong a word, for all the people that are involved with it. So that's the second one they're going to be doing. And then the third one is Slade Gardens, which is a community playground in London, and the team are going to be looking at a mechanism to use technology to keep better track of who's coming and using the facility, when it's being used, how they can promote it more effectively. So again, this is another great example. In fact, all of these are examples, again, of things where we can take the output of that and offer that to other organizations to enable the scale to be increased of the impact of that work. So we're going to be hearing from Fozia shortly, who's going to talk around the context in the third sector and funding and philanthropy. It's a really fascinating topic that we're really looking forward to hearing from Fozia about. But anybody who's in the third sector knows this stuff. So this comes from a report from the Charity Aid Foundation, and there's a lot of text on the slide, so excuse me, but if you just look at the bits in bold, 81% of charities say that demand for their service has increased compared to a year ago. No surprise, cost of living crisis, you would expect that to be the case. But fewer than 2/5 of them have confidence that they can afford to meet that current demand. Half of them say that they can afford the current staffing levels, only half of them, while 3 in 5 are struggling to recruit or retain suitably qualified candidates or volunteers. That's a pretty bleak picture. And anybody who works in the third sector is well aware of the challenges. And that's another interesting spin-off of giving people the opportunity to work to support these organizations. Countless times we've heard people say, it's really brought home to me the scale of this problem, the circumstances that people are having to deal with, and I want to do something, and I want to do more about this. So this is from Third Sector, the website, the news website for the third sector, and this was the study that they did back in 2019 now, but the same principles still apply, I think. So must improve productivity. So basically, without reading all that sort of stuff, everybody says, yes, absolutely, we should increase productivity. It would improve the lives of the people that we support. It will make us better as an organization. But 87% felt that increasing productivity would be challenging. 55% said it'd be really challenging. And again, no surprise, right? And it's not just in the third sector. The UK has a very significant productivity challenge across all sectors. So this is The Economist. Britain's productivity problem is long-standing and getting worse. So we hear about that on the news all the time. And that's not a very helpful bit of advice. And it's not what's meant by it. But the word productivity, it has a pretty negative connotation for a lot of people because it doesn't get taken to mean that. You're not working hard enough, you need to produce more. But we know that all these people in these organizations are flat out. they are not coasting in any sense of by any stretch of the imagination. So this is an ideal opportunity to use technology to greater effect. There's a huge amount of talk about AI in all sectors, including the third sector right now. And people talk about using generative AI to create content. So that can be content for your marketing communications, it can be content for your reporting, it can be grant applications. So, there are various sites and they're very helpful to organizations because raising money is always one of the top priorities for any third sector organization. But this, I think, is an area that is becoming increasingly of interest, is the use of AI to tackle that productivity problem. And again, this is not just for the third sector. So this is from an IBM blog article, and it's reporting a study by McKinsey saying that software developers in this study were found to be about twice as productive as those who were not using AI. And they're making the point that this is not the difficult stuff that it needs humans to do. It's all the tedious stuff that goes alongside it. So if you can automate that side of it, it actually frees people up. And exactly the same principle applies clearly to service delivery. The highest value that most charities deliver is the personal contact they have with people who need support. It's that person-to-person interaction. So the more time you can get for that, the more effective and the more satisfied you can be. This is from GitHub. So we have with us today Arfon, who is the product lead within GitHub for the Copilot project. And we had a really interesting conversation the other day about that, which we can touch on maybe a bit later. But this is a study that they carried out, which was taking about 100 developers and splitting them into two groups. One group which used the Copilot AI, one which didn't. And there was a modest increase in the number who finished the task they were asked to carry out, but a dramatic increase in the productivity of those people. And really interesting, what Arfon was talking about was the way that they're planning to use AI to lower the barrier to contribution. And for us, that's a really important thing, and we're going to touch on that later today as well. Again, from that same study, it's not just about saving time. You can see this was the feedback. I'm more productive, 88%, that's great. Lower frustration, more fulfilled, more satisfying work. Those are tremendous wins, as well as the efficiency gains. People are more satisfied in the job that they're doing. They feel that they're doing a better job. So this is, again, from the tech sector, but the same principles apply clearly for the third sector. And the good news is it is happening in the third sector now. And Stuart is an example of exactly that. So I think your newly minted title is Head of Innovation, but you've been working on this stuff for a while now. So Stuart is now Head of Innovation for this Citizen Advice grouping, runs 4 advice centres in Greater Manchester, and have already made very effective use of AI and demonstrating those productivity savings. So it really does apply, and it can be achieved in the third sector. So lots of challenges, but lots of opportunity as well. So what we're looking to achieve today is to share these thoughts about it, get some ideas about what we can do, and, as I said, leave here with the intention and the commitment to do something about it. Many of you have already done that, and thank you so much for that. And we're continuing to recruit and encourage as many organizations and individuals as we can to make that step. Because that ecosystem approach is, I believe, the way that you can actually tackle some of these really, really big problems, because no organization is big enough to do it on its own. Even an organization with the resources of a Barclays, with the best will in the world, cannot do this on its own. So that whole idea of the whole being greater than the sum of the parts is fundamental to what we're trying to do here. So in terms of what's going to be happening today, these are the key elements of what we're going to be doing during the course of today. Delighted that we've got 2 outstanding keynote sessions to start and finish the day. Fuzzy will be kicking us off shortly, giving us the context and the background around some of this stuff, and finishing up with Chris Ashworth, who is Head of Social Impact at Nominet. Nominet is one of these companies that everybody depends on, but most people don't know about. It's the organization that manages the registration of .co.uk and other .uk domains on the internet. It was set up as a public benefit company, so it has a commitment to social impact, and it'd be really fascinating to hear Chris tell that story. We are going to talk about 1,000 shoulders to the wheel. So I mentioned earlier that we've had about 3,500 individuals who have signed up as volunteers with us. More than 1,000 of them have actively worked on a project. So again, that's the kind of collective effort that really starts to make a material impact and a material dent in some of the things that we're trying to tackle. So one of our team, Joanna, will be talking to a number of individual volunteers, and I think you'll find their stories absolutely fascinating. Skilled volunteering, the kind of program that we're talking about with the Tech for Good Alliance, we'll be talking about the three-way win that comes out of that. So obviously, it's a win for the organizations that are receiving the support, but it's very much a win for the organizations that are providing that support and for the individuals in those organizations. Again, I touched on it earlier, some really, really moving, actually, case studies we've had of the impact that people have felt through being able to make that contribution. It's really powerful. We're going to talk a bit about what we call the platform for the Tech for Good Alliance. So this is the underpinnings that we need to put in place to make this something that can be both sustainable and scalable. So we'll be talking about that this afternoon. We will be going into the Soundscape story and talking about that in a bit more detail. And then we'll seek to draw things together at the end and share some ideas about how we think we can take this further and go further. So that's it. That's our mantra for today. You've all come ready to listen. You are listening. Thank you very much for your time and your attention. I'll hand back to Graham now, but don't forget the second bit. Thank you very much.